Amy, what is our fifth main topic today?
Our fifth main topic today comes from Alex. Hi, John, Rob, and Amy. We'll pass the love on to Rob for you. I just got out of seeing Thor, Love, and Thunder, and I enjoyed it. Good time for sure, but even though I liked it, is it just me, or does it sort of feel like the MCU has lost some steam in Phase 4? I can't really put my finger on why that is, but it just feels that way. I wanted to ask if you feel the same, and if so, what do you attribute that to? Is it the writing, the acting, the stories? Why is the MCU not firing on all cylinders right now?
All right, thanks a lot for saying that in, Alex. And look, let's preface all this by saying this. I'm a big fan of the MCU. Everybody knows that. I mean, I don't love everything they do, particularly with a number of their Disney Plus shows. But yeah, and, I wasn't really thrilled with Black Widow, even though I liked it enough. And on top of that, in Phase 4, I think they have done some very interesting things. And I think in Phase 4, they have taken some very big swings. And there have definitely been things in Phase 4 that I have truly loved. Shang-Chi, Spider-Man No Way Home. I have WandaVision. I have loved Ms. Marvel up till now. We'll see whether it can stick to the landing like Boys 3 did. I have my doubts with the way it's been paced. But, there have been a lot of things they've done very interesting, some big swings. I like Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I like Thor, Love and Thunder. I saw it for again last night. All that kind of stuff. But I have been vocal as a fan. I've been pretty vocal about the fact that I feel like, I agree with you. I feel like Phase 4 has lost some of the wind out of its sails. Phase 4 has not lived up to phases 1, 2, or 3. And we're seeing some hiccups and some missteps that we're not used to seeing in the MCU. Does any of that mean the MCU is done? No, it just means I think they've hit a rough patch. And again, to bring it to professional sports, even the best team in the league will hit a stretch of 7 games where they won 4 and lost 3, which isn't great, but that happens and then they get back on track. I think the MCU can get back on track. But I do believe there have been some problems with Phase 4. So let's kind of codify it a little bit. Here, at least to me, and this is just from my perspective as an individual fan, maybe some of these will resonate with you, maybe they won't. But here are 5 things that to me are kind of the problems that Phase 4 at this point the MCU is struggling with and having. And for that, let's go jump on over to the Campea classroom here. All right. These are in no particular order, okay? Just letting you guys know that these are in no particular order, even though I'm saying numbers 1 through 5. I'm just throwing these out as 5 individual things. They don't necessarily mean one's more important than the other, okay? All right. With that, do we have the Campea classroom ready to go, Jonathan?
Coming up.
Okay, we're good. But I'll still start with number 1, and then he'll bring up when he's ready to go. Here's what I think is the first problem with the MCU right now in Phase 4. Number 1 is the lack of an identity. When you go back to, say, the MCU in Phases 1 and 2, and even for the most part in Phase 3, while you have a bunch of movies that are quite different from each other, Ant-Man was about trying to save his family. It's more of a heist comedy kind of idea. When you get into Captain America, The Winter Soldier, it's a 70s political thriller, all that kind of, even though the movies were quite different, at their heart, there was an underlying DNA of an MCU movie, right? You could just tell by the tone of the film and the feel of the film, this is an MCU film. Even though they had different approaches, different subgenres, all that kind of stuff. To me, Phase 4 has not been that. They continue to do what they should do, which is, diversify in their subgenre, but that underlying DNA doesn't seem to be there anymore. Like, if you didn't know that Eternals, which I like, but if you didn't know Eternals was in the MCU, and if in the trailers for the movie, what's the name of the actress who plays like the prime Eternal? Not Cersei, the one who dies. I'm forgetting the name of the actress, but anyway.
Salma Hayek.
Yeah, Salma Hayek. Yes, thank you, Ray. If you didn't see like Salma Hayek in the trailer say, Thanos. If you didn't mention Thanos, then you would be forgiven that you would never even know that was an MCU movie.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about references. I'm talking about in its very nature, there just doesn't seem to be that identity with them anymore. And again, that has nothing to do with playing around with different subgenres. They've done that before. They should continue to do that. But that underlying identity. And a part of the reason for that is going to be another one of the issues that we'll talk about in just a little bit. So for me, number one is lack of an identity. Number two is this: lack of a clear figurehead. When you get into the first three phases of the MCU, Tony Stark and Captain Steve Rogers, they are clearly the heads of the MCU. And even when you get into movies that don't have them, their presence is almost there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and when the people who kind of are not just the actors who represent the brand, but the characters that represent the brand, they're gone, and that's fine. But moving into phase 4, and now how many projects are we into phase 4? We're like, what, 10, 11, 12 projects? I mean, I've lost count of how many. We are well into phase 4. And even now, we thought coming into phase 4 that, what we would have emerge is kind of new figures. Who's kind of the head of the Avengers now? Who's kind of like the face of the MCU now? And they haven't done that.
If anything, it's maybe Doctor Strange, for me at least, but he's so much less present. And frankly, I think just a little bit weaker of a character.
Well, and on top of that, they put out this big thing where he says, well, Doctor Strange isn't even an Avenger. He'll work with the Avengers sometimes, but he's not even an Avenger. So he's kind of aloof and kind of set aside from that. So I feel the lack of a clear figureheads of the MCU at this point. Like early in phase 2 and going into phase 3, Kevin Feige kind of maybe hinted it might be Captain Marvel, or it could be, but they never really did. Mm-hmm. So I think that's kind of one of the problems they have right now. Number 3 is this: over-reliance on fan service. An over-reliance on fan service. Now, listen, fan service is not in and of itself a bad thing. Fan service is like any other tool. It can be used well, like in Spider-Man No Way Home. There's a lot of fan service in Spider-Man No Way Home, but it's used to serve the narrative and it's integral to the story, and they make it work. So fan service can be a very good thing. In the earlier days of the MCU, like in phase 1, 2, and they got a little bit more into it in phase 3, but you didn't have that, we don't know what to do here, pop in an element of fan service. And we get more of that, I feel, in phase 4 than we ever did before. And to me, that's to the detriment of the overall quality of the storytelling, whatever. Like listen, even in phase 3, if you go into Endgame, like there are certain scenes that are clearly fan service, right? Scenes that don't really make any practical sense, but it's going to give a big pop to the audience, so throw it in. Okay, that's there in Endgame for sure. But I just feel like there's more of that in phase 4 than anything else, and they're kind of leaning a little bit into it a little bit too much. So that's me. All right. Oop, that was the wrong, let me undo that.
Can you fix that typo? It's going to drive me crazy.
That's what happens when you're doing it live. Okay. Here's another thing. Part 4, or issue 4 here.
Thank you.
Is oversaturation.
Yeah.
There's too much.
Yeah.
And I mentioned this before. Now you can say, well, if everything's great, it doesn't matter how much of it there is. Yes, but creatively, you can only stretch yourself so thin. Kevin Feige, back in phases 1, 2, and 3, Kevin Feige had a direct hand and a controlling arm on everything that was happening in the MCU. As a result, there was a certain level of quality control that could always be there. Mm-hmm. We have found out in interviews, even though we knew this, there's just far too much for Kevin Feige to be directly involved in any real legitimate way. So he's got to now pick and choose which projects get more of his attention and which projects get less of his attention. As a result, not only are we being inundated with all these projects, but we're getting a lot more of them where Kevin Feige isn't as directly involved as he really should be. Because he just can't. He's one man. He's human. If you cut him, does he not bleed? Of course he does. If you wrong him, will he not avenge? So it's Kevin Feige. He's a human. He's a man. And we have, again, I've lost count of how many projects. We've had a lot of projects in phase 4 already. And we just went over the 14 or 15 more still coming just in this phase. And like, that's just too much. We're getting to be an oversaturation. And if you're Kevin Feige and his creative team and you had 15 great ideas and 4 movies coming out this year, well, that's, 4 or 5 great ideas you can give each movie. You got like 15 great ideas and 17 shows and movies coming out. You get less than 1 per show. It starts to dilute. It starts to dilute the quality, and I think that's been a problem. All right, problem number 5, an excess of new characters. Listen, the MCU needs new characters. It absolutely does. But let's go back to phase 1. We met Iron Man, got his whole movie, got to know him. Nick Fury comes in, introducing the concept of a connected universe. We go back. We go into Captain America, Captain America, the First Avenger. It's Captain America. The world knows Captain America. We go back there. We tell that story. Then we tell Thor. And in the midst of all that, then the Avengers come, and then the focus really does stay on those characters for a lot. Now, you can't stay just focused on those characters forever. Nobody's suggesting that you can. But it feels like we have introduced more new characters in the first half of phase 4 than we did in all of phases 1, 2, and 3 combined. Right? Like, and we're getting these new stories, and not just new stories, but new complications to the world of the MCU. So, okay, there's the time variance authority. All right, how does that differ from what the Ancient One told Stephen Strange in the first Doctor Strange, that there's already other dimensions and realities? Well, if those are, doesn't that contradict what they said with the time variance authority? And with that, I mean, with the little time jumping that Thanos does in Endgame, we got different, is that a new reality? Oh, and in Ms. Marvel, saying that there's other world that overlaps with our world. How does that get in? Not only are they introducing all these new characters, they're introducing all these new, some of which contradictory, physics to the nature of reality, time, and whatever that do not fit together, as some MCU apologists try to pretend. Oh, no, John, this all makes sense together. No, it really doesn't. Some of it is very contradictory. Yeah. They're going to have to retcon some of it. But they've done so much of that I feel like we as the audience have not had the time. Like, you know what I wish? And this isn't going to surprise anybody because I'm a big Shang-Chi fan. But I kind of wish that they made Shang-Chi and then had him ready to appear in something else, like within the next 14 months. Yeah. Maybe not Shang-Chi 2, but have him appear. Like, let us now, we've met these characters, now let us really get invested in these characters.
Make him and his mythology like part of the world in a more integrated way.
And by the way, Shang-Chi, that other universe that his mother's from, how does that fit into the time variance authority and multiverse of madness and all that kind of, like, so at any rate, when you look at it, I think the big main problems that we've been facing in the MCU in phase 4, which again, I have still enjoyed. I do not think the MCU has come off the rails. I do not think the MCU is doomed. I'm still very excited about all the upcoming projects, but I'm saying that as a serious fan of this stuff, I do believe phase 4 has been slowed down a bit, even in the midst of some very, very, very good things that they've done. And I think those problems are, number 1, a lack of an identity. Number 2, the lack of clear figureheads. Number 3, over-reliance on fan service. Number 4, oversaturation. And number 5, an excess of, bring up the classroom again. Not just an excess of new characters, an excess of new characters and ideas. Like with all the multiple dimensions, this and that and everything. Then we're going to get Secret Wars. It's been so much without allowing the audience to just marinate in it, enjoy a couple of the new characters for a while. So I don't know. Those are my takes on it. We want to take a moment and thank the sponsor of today's video, Storyblocks. Guys, I have been an enthusiastic fan and user of Storyblocks for years. I go to them whenever I'm in need of content creation assets like royalty-free music, video clips, or templates for my creative projects, ranging anywhere from little editorial videos to my very own full-feature documentary. Storyblocks helps you bring your stories, videos, and projects to life without sacrifices due to time, budget, or access to resources. They have over 1 million different story assets ranging from stock videos, audio and music, an in-browser video editor, and they feature pre-designed design templates, animations, and outros. Storyblocks uses an affordable subscription model, and their unlimited access plans offers, well, unlimited video and audio downloads rather than a costly pay-per-clip model. With Storyblocks, you'll be able to create more content and, more importantly, better content, all while using a subscription plan that fits your budget, utilizing unlimited downloads of demand-driven and diverse content. So if you're interested in upping your content creation game, head over to www.storyblocks.com/Campea and get started today. That's www.storyblocks.com/Campea. Amy, when you look at Phase 4, first of all, maybe you think Phase 4 is the strongest phase of the MCU so far. You and I haven't really talked about that. But if you were to point out maybe a couple of the weaknesses in the MCU right now as they're represented in Phase 4, what would you say they are?
I certainly don't think it's the strongest. I would always make an argument for Phases 1, 2, and 3 kind of had that time to build. So let's say we put a couple of the best movies from Phase 4 into Phase 1. People would be like, this is amazing. So I do have a little edge of like, let's give them some time. Let's see where this is going. But I absolutely agree. Let me put it this way. I do my best to keep up on all this stuff and follow the plot lines. If in Phases 1, 2, and 3, I had an occasional like turn to my boyfriend and go, remind me who that is or remind me what that means, it was like a 30-second explanation. I was like, right. I remember. Okay, great. In Phase 4, it feels like we got to pause for 5 minutes every time I miss a little something, or every time I'm going, I don't think I saw that series. What does that mean? You're right. It's just getting so complicated. It felt like in Phase 1, 2, and 3, we had sort of these great standalone movies that worked as standalone movies. And there was a really nice slow build up to what ultimately came at the end of Phase 3. Phase 4, there's a weird, frantic, like everything has to get introduced and tie in. And there's, again, I totally agree. It's just too many concepts. It's a little too complicated. And yeah, I just don't know if they have that. Either they don't have that star power yet or they're not using it. I'm not saying everyone in it isn't fantastic, but it's like, yeah, double down on a Shang-Chi. Could that be your guy that people love and identify with and want to see throughout all these movies the way you did with an Iron Man? But ultimately, to me, it's just becoming so much like, you could go see a Captain America movie and you weren't feeling lost that you maybe hadn't seen Iron Man yet.
Right.
Now I feel like if I haven't seen every series, every movie, kind of some familiarity with the comic books too, suddenly I feel like the average fan is feeling just a little bit overwhelmed, and we're getting that fan service and that, they're alluding that this is coming down the line. It's like, well, the average moviegoer cares way less about that and more about just, did you give me a great movie?
Yeah, now let's reflect, going back on that 0.5 thing again, about how complicated this is getting for the average fan.
Yeah.
Right? For the average fan, not the hardcore comic book fan, the average fan. Phase 1, 2, and 3 was one basic, simple thing. The most complicated thing was introducing Thor. Because that introduced the idea of Asgard, of Odin, and all that kind of stuff. And
but even that was like, I know Norse mythology. Like these are figures people know. Now we're getting into sort of these very kind of spiritual, mythological worlds that I'm not really familiar with, that I don't really have
back to Thor, right? Even in Thor, in a discussion with Jane, he says, what some call magic and some call science, we call one and the same. And so he brings our understanding of the universe back into simple focus, right? He says, it's not actually that complicated, Jane. Some call magic, some call science. We call one the same.
Yeah.
Right? So in Phases 1, 2, and 3, the idea of our basic philosophical understanding of the nature of reality in the universe was still a very simple thing. There is a big alien bad guy out there who's collecting these stones, and that's dangerous to us.
And the stones became so nice and clear. Once they started introducing that, you saw one and you knew, like, okay, this is all tied into that.
Right. And they paced it and made it very simple. In Phase 4 so far, we have, in our basic understanding of the nature of reality in the universe, Celestials, the Time Variance Authority, whatever the name of that other kingdom is in Shang-Chi. I keep forgetting the name of the other place.
Right.
We now have in Ms. Marvel that other universe that overlaps with theirs, where there's a time veil that apparently is not included with all this kind of stuff.
Right.
They try to sometimes say, that the events of Loki and Carter of the Seas created all that, but that's not true because they were talking about other realities in Doctor Strange even before that, even though it was just basically referenced and never really touched on to complicate things. So as we get more and more, you're right, we get more and more into Phase 4. For the average fan, this is becoming incredibly convoluted.
I feel like I need a damn flow chart where it used to just be like, right, stone powerful, bad man wants stone, good guy trying to get stone. And now it's like, so in this universe, but this over, like, I feel like I need a whiteboard going into every movie.
The quantum realm. Like, how does the quantum realm play in all that?
Right.
We got Kang coming. Now, Kevin Feige did say that the overall direction of Phase 4 is going to come more into focus in upcoming projects. Okay, great. Because here's the thing. I don't think one of the big problems of Phase 4 is the fact that they haven't shown us what the overall story is yet. Like, what is the Thanos of this? I don't think that's the problem. As long as you're making good individual movies, I think you're all good. But when individual movies start convoluting the way we're able to see other individual movies like this without any understanding, that does become a problem. So we'll see if that gets cleared up here. What do you think, Ray?
Let me just add just a little bit right here. I think we're on this Phase 4 is like all the other phases. It's like a road, right? But this time we have a new vehicle like Disney Plus. This is the first time we're driving this sort of vehicle. So they don't know how to completely drive it well yet. We're going to have some bumps in the road. I'm the type of viewer that, will look out the window. Oh, cool. That's cool. And sometimes, but then, let's get to the end first. Let's get to where we're going, because if where we are at the end is awesome, a lot of the people that don't like what's going on are going to probably end up saying, "Oh, Phase 4 wasn't that bad."
Well, winning cures everything, right?
But I'm just
winning
saying,
cures everything,
right? But I'm just saying, like, there's been some hiccups along the way, like with any new thing that you're trying to use in your medium, which is Disney Plus.
Yeah.
I, for one thing, enjoy the new characters. If they don't make sense within the whole universe, just the introduction to these characters that I could never afford the comic book of. Because a lot of these characters, I would pass by in the store and be like, that's a cool comic book cover, but wouldn't have the time or the money when I was a kid to buy and actually check it out. Now I'm being introduced to these characters and I'm like, oh, that person looked cooler on the cover than they are, them being introduced to me. But you know what? I get it. It's not all perfect, but I think we should all just like wait for it to just like unfold and if we don't like it, then,
I agree with that to a degree, but meanwhile, as audiences, we are having to go and watch this movie, and sometimes people walking out dissatisfied.
Yeah.
And if you need another movie later to come out to make you enjoy a movie you're watching right now, then you're not doing your job.
Or if you absolutely have to, like I said, I've seen every movie and every Disney Plus show. I feel like the earlier phases did a great job. Like I said, if you know the basics, you can hop in anywhere.
And again, it sounds like I am totally just bitching and moaning, complaining about, everything with the MCU sucks.
It was the topic.
I love the MCU. I do. I am bringing up my concerns because I do like it so much.
Yeah.
But anyway, guys, we've spent enough time on that. Question is for you. How do you feel about the MCU Phase 4 right now? Maybe to you, it's been the greatest phase they've done so far. They've done some great things in it, introduced some fantastic new characters. Maybe you're loving it. Maybe you're like me and you feeling like it's lost a step or two. If so, what do you attribute that to? Whatever your thoughts are, fellow fans, jump down into the comment section below and let me know your thoughts.